Prosecutors say the men with links to the Hells Angels were hired by an Iranian drug trafficker, also charged. The intended victims were both living in Maryland at the time, one of them a defector from Iran. American officials say a hostile drone launched by an Iranian-backed militia was mistaken for a U.S. drone that was in the area at the same time. And that's why air defenses failed to stop a deadly attack on the U.S. military outpost in Jordan yesterday. As CTV's Vanessa Lee tells us, we're also learning more tonight about the 3 soldiers who were killed.
American troops were killed by enemy fire in the Middle East for the first time since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. A drone packed with explosives launched into a small American base near Jordan's border with Syria early Sunday morning, while many soldiers were still asleep.
It's fundamentally different now because we have 3 families who just got the worst possible news.
Sergeant William Rivers was 46. Specialist Brianna Moffett, 23. Specialist Kennedy Sanders' parents says she volunteered to deploy.
It's just unfair that she'll never get to realize those dreams that she had.
The U.S. is blaming Iran-backed militias and is looking at retaliation options, saying it will do what is needed to protect its troops.
We are not looking for a war with Iran. We're not looking to escalate here. This attack over the weekend was escalatory. Make no mistake about it. And it requires a response. Make no mistake about that.
Iran is denying any involvement, calling the accusations baseless. Pentagon officials say the drone flew in at the same time a U.S. drone was also landing, possibly confusing the air defense systems. The deadly attack, a major escalation of an already tense situation.
We're seeing the frustration of the people in the region about what is happening in the region and the way that they're seeing the lack of action on the part of so many and thinking that it is their responsibility to move forward and do something.
The U.S. is now facing a delicate dilemma as it walks a fine line between trying to deter further attacks while also trying to prevent the conflict from expanding. Omar.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. And the UN's aid agency in Gaza warns it could run out of money within weeks as it ran to a diplomatic storm. A number of countries have halted donations after Israel accused 12 of its employees of taking part in the October 7th attack. And here in Canada, on the National Day of Action Against Islamophobia, a leading Muslim organization is upset with the Prime Minister.
At this moment, we no longer think it's productive to speak with this Prime Minister.
It abruptly pulled out of a meeting with Justin Trudeau, saying he has failed to act on hate crimes. Several cities across Canada are marking a somber anniversary. 7 years ago today, a gunman opened fire in a mosque in Quebec City, killing 6 worshippers. There were ceremonies in Quebec City this evening, as well as in Montreal and Laval, to honor the victims and reflect on their lives. In the House of Commons today, MPs observed a moment of silence. Mounties in Manitoba believe they have finally cracked a cold case in the killing of Crystal Saunders, a 24-year-old mother whose remains were found in a ditch. The development comes after nearly 2 decades, and now a Vancouver man has been charged with second-degree murder. CTV's John Hendricks on what led police to the suspect.
17 years ago, the remains of Crystal Saunders was discovered in a ditch in St. Ambrose. She had gone missing just the day before, and by coincidence, an off-duty RCMP officer found her while checking his trap lines in the area.
The off-duty officer understood the importance of containing the scene and preserving the evidence at that crucial time.
Now, nearly 2 decades later, the evidence he helped preserve has led to an arrest.
On January 27th, the RCMP Major Crime Special Projects team arrested 42-year-old Kevin Q from Vancouver, BC.
Police say he wasn't on their radar as a suspect. That is, until DNA collected at the St. Ambrose crime scene was matched in 2014. But RCMP say the initial DNA match a decade ago was not enough for an immediate arrest.
The investigation that happened since the DNA, like I said, some very complex investigative techniques that I can't divulge here right now. They're very sensitive. but that gave us the evidence to put this over the edge, to secure a charge.
The Saunders case was one of several missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls cases in Manitoba. Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says the resolution of this case will stir up mixed emotions in families.
Hope that the RCMP or the WPS are continuing to investigate these cold case long files, but also frustration that their loved one is either not found or nobody's been charged or nobody's arrested.
RCMP say Kevin Q has been in a number of provinces over the years, including Alberta, Ontario, and BC. He's currently being held in custody in BC. None of the charges against him have been tested in court. Omar?
Right, John, thank you. There are growing calls to increase supports for survivors of sexual assault tonight, a day after a member of Canada's 2018 junior hockey team turned himself in to police in London, Ontario, after allegations several members of the team attacked a woman in a hotel. CTV's Heather Butts reports.
Alex Formanton spent less than 2 hours inside a London police detachment when he surrendered Sunday. His lawyer confirming the former World Juniors player is one of several facing charges in connection to an accusation made in 2018. Adding Alex will vigorously defend his innocence and asks that people not rush to judgment without hearing all of the evidence. Advocates want the same for the alleged victim.
If this was something that maybe she didn't want made public, or she initiated a criminal process, but now she's hearing, backlash and seeing how public this is, then, I think that can be really, really difficult.
Bailey Reed works in sexual violence prevention. She says this already very public case is likely to have triggering effects on others.
Remembering that not only is this survivor, watching this and feeling the impacts, but all of the survivors in our lives are watching this and feeling impacts.
Last week, the Globe and Mail reported 5 members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey team were told to surrender to police in connection with an alleged group sexual assault of a woman in June of that year. The allegations have not been tested in court. If it does move forward, this will be a long and challenging process, says this criminologist and sexual violence survivor.
I did report my rape to the police, and I had to tell my story 14 times, and I didn't even go to trial.
Dawn Moore says those who do go to trial will have to tell their stories repeatedly, which can be deeply re-traumatizing.
Courts were never set up for sexual assault. They were set up to protect property, and that's it. So when we get into questions of sexual assault, the whole thing gets turned on its head, because the question isn't really guilt or innocence, it's consent. And we can't prove consent, because it's not something that can be documented.
Authorities won't confirm the names of others involved. Investigators plan to update the case a week from today. Omar.
All right, Heather, thank you. Coming up.
It's too wet.
Buses pulled off the roads, voting delayed, and schools and businesses closed. Plus, a fierce pet owner fights to save her dog from thieves. A severe storm shut schools and slowed down life along the East Coast today in the first nor'easter of 2024. CTV's Garrett Berry on the impact.
A snow day like this in Halifax means all traffic moves a bit slower.
Good, I'm slow, but I'm making it.
And this thick, wet snow had one snowblower begging for mercy.
It's too wet. It's too wet.
Schools in many parts of Nova Scotia closed all day, so did some colleges and universities. But what glanced by the Maritimes hit Newfoundland and Labrador hard. The snow fell fast and heavy in St. John's after it started, pushing road conditions downhill quickly. The city's bus service came off the road at 4 o'clock. Schools and colleges closed early, and the provincial government opened up warming centers for the homeless. Even voting in a provincial by-election was delayed until tomorrow. Some youngsters made the most of their snow day, burning off a little energy on the hills.
I'm doing backwards like this, too. I just love it.
Why?
Because, it's so fluffy.
Winds have picked up this evening, gusting up to 70 kilometers an hour, and they're expected to stay high tomorrow, too, making these streets quite a mess. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Canada is adding to its medal haul 2 years after the 2022 Beijing Olympics. The Court of Arbitration for Sport has disqualified Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva for doping. The ruling means the Russians will be stripped of the gold in the figure skating's team event, and Canada previously